Diana, you're just too old and boring now. Sarah understands what a real man needs. Those were the last words my husband of 12 years said to me before walking out of our shared office at Henderson & Associates Marketing, his arm around my 22-year-old intern. My name is Diana Foster. I'm 38 years old, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Client Relations at one of Chicago's most prestigious marketing firms. What my soon-to-be ex-husband Marcus didn't know was that I had recorded every word on my phone, and more importantly, I had been meticulously documenting his affair for the past 6 weeks. I simply nodded and said, "I understand, Marcus. I hope you both are very happy together." The look of confusion on his face was priceless. He expected tears, screaming, maybe even begging. Instead, I calmly walked back to my corner office and began implementing a plan that would destroy both their careers and secure my future in ways they couldn't imagine. You see, Marcus Foster wasn't just my husband. He was also the director of digital strategy at Henderson & Associates. And Sarah Mitchell, the bubbly blonde intern who thought she could sleep her way to the top, her exact words in a text message I had screenshots of, had no idea that she had just tangled with someone who had spent 15 years mastering corporate warfare. Let me take you back to how this all began. Marcus and I met at Northwestern University in 2009. I was completing my MBA in marketing strategy, and he was finishing his degree in digital communications. We were both ambitious, driven, and deeply in love. Or so I thought. We got married right after graduation, and both landed entry-level positions at Henderson & Associates. It was like a fairy tale. Two young professionals building their careers together at Chicago's premier marketing agency. Over the years, I threw myself into my work with an intensity that impressed even the firm's founding partners. I landed major accounts like Millennium Pharmaceuticals, $2.3 million annually, Lakefront Properties, $1.8 million, and the Chicago Arts Foundation, $950,000. My client retention rate was 97%. The highest in the company's 40-year history. Meanwhile, Marcus handled the digital campaigns for my accounts, and we made a formidable team. Or so I believed. The first sign of trouble came in February when Sarah Mitchell started her internship. Fresh out of DePaul University with a degree in communications and an Instagram account with 45,000 followers, she was assigned to assist with our digital campaigns. At first, I was genuinely excited to mentor a young woman entering the industry. I had no idea I was training my own replacement. The changes in Marcus were subtle at first. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Weekend work sessions that I wasn't invited to join. New cologne that smelled nothing like the Armani he'd worn for years. When I asked about his schedule, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Just trying to stay ahead of the digital trends, babe. You know how fast this industry moves." I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was underestimating Sarah. During our weekly mentoring sessions, she seemed genuinely interested in learning about client relations and long-term strategy. She asked thoughtful questions about account management and took detailed notes in her little pink moleskin notebook. What I didn't realize was that she was pumping me for information about our biggest clients while simultaneously seducing my husband. The truth hit me like a freight train on a Tuesday morning in late March. I had arrived at the office early to prepare for a 9 a.m. presentation to Millennium Pharmaceuticals. I needed to grab my backup drive from Marcus's computer, something I had done countless times before. That's when I saw them. Hundreds of text messages between Marcus and Sarah, dating back to her second week at the company. The conversation thread was labeled "My Beautiful Future" with a heart emoji. I felt my stomach drop as I scrolled through 6 weeks of increasingly intimate messages. Sarah, last night was incredible. I never knew an older man could make me feel so alive. Marcus, 22 looks beautiful on you. Diana's letting herself go anyway. Sarah, when are you going to leave her? I'm tired of sneaking around. Marcus, soon, baby. Just need to make sure I get my share of her client commissions first. She's built quite the portfolio. But the message that made my blood run cold was from just 3 days earlier. Sarah. I learned so much from Diana today about the Millennium account. She has no idea I'm going to be managing it soon. Poor old thing thinks I actually respect her. Marcus. That's my girl. Sleep your way to the top, then kick the ladder down. Sarah. Already working on it. Mr. Henderson seems very interested in my fresh perspective on digital integration. I sat there in Marcus's ergonomic chair, staring at the screen, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just adultery. It was corporate espionage. They weren't just destroying my marriage. They were actively plotting to steal my clients and sabotage my career. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry in that moment. I felt focused. I photographed every single message, calendar invite, and email exchange between them. Then I opened Marcus's browser history and discovered something that made my previous findings look like child's play. He had been accessing my client files using my login credentials, which he knew from years of working together, and forwarding confidential pricing strategies, competitor analyses, and renewal negotiations to his personal Gmail account. More damning. Still, Sarah had been using the company's client database to build her own contact list, downloading proprietary market research that had cost Henderson and Associates over $200,000 to commission. In her personal cloud drive, I found a folder labeled New Company Prospects, containing contact information for 17 of my top clients. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to start their own marketing firm using my client base and our company's proprietary research. I spent the next 2 hours methodically documenting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, metadata, financial records showing unusual overtime claims, and expense reports for client dinners that I now realized were romantic dates. By 11 a.m., I had assembled a 47-page dossier that would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. But I didn't go straight to HR. That would have been the impulsive move Marcus and Sarah expected from a scorned wife. Instead, I continued my normal routine for 2 more weeks, gathering additional evidence while consulting with lawyers about both criminal charges and divorce proceedings. During this period, I had to watch them flirt openly in meetings, exchange meaningful glances during presentations, and worst of all, listen to Sarah's increasingly bold comments about bringing fresh energy to client relationships. The girl was actually taunting me to my face, confident that I was too naive to notice. The breaking point came during our monthly all-hands meeting on April 12th. James Henderson, the firm's managing partner, was discussing Q2 projections when Sarah raised her hand and suggested that some of our senior account managers might benefit from learning newer digital integration strategies. She looked directly at me while saying this, with a smile that was pure poison. I'd be happy to share some insights I've gathered about modernizing our client approach, she continued, especially for our pharmaceutical and real estate accounts. The audacity was breathtaking. She was openly discussing my clients while sitting in a room where half the staff knew she was sleeping with my husband. I simply nodded and said, "That sounds wonderful, Sarah. Fresh perspectives are always valuable." After the meeting, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Janet Morrison, our Director of Human Resources. The second was to Michael Chen, my attorney. The third was to David Rodriguez, a private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud cases. "Janet," I said when she answered, "would you have time this afternoon to discuss a serious matter involving potential policy violations and data theft? I have some documentation I think you'll want to see." There was a pause. Janet had been with Henderson and Associates for 18 years and had handled everything from sexual harassment cases to embezzlement schemes. She knew that tone in my voice meant serious trouble for someone. "How serious are we talking, Diana?" "Termination, serious. Possibly criminal charges, serious. I can clear my schedule for 2 p.m. Bring everything." That afternoon, I walked into Janet's office with 3 perfectly organized binders. The first contained every text message, email, and calendar invitation proving the affair. The second documented the unauthorized access to client files and theft of proprietary information. The third outlined the apparent plan to steal clients, and start a competing firm. Janet's expression grew darker with each page she turned. As head of HR, she had seen plenty of office affairs, but the combination of adultery, data theft, and industrial espionage was unprecedented in the firm's history. "Diana," she said after reviewing everything, "this is comprehensive. How long have you been documenting this?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I wanted to make absolutely certain I had everything before involving you, I replied, handing her a USB drive. "This contains metadata, browser logs, and financial records showing the scope of what they've done." Janet plugged in the drive and spent another 20 minutes reviewing the digital evidence. The room was silent except for the occasional click of her mouse and the soft whistle she made when she discovered particularly damaging information. "Diana, this is airtight. The unauthorized access to client files alone is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. The conspiracy to steal proprietary research." She shook her head. "This could destroy their careers permanently." "That's not my primary concern," I said evenly. "I want to protect Henderson and Associates and our clients. Whatever happens to them is simply a consequence of their choices." Janet leaned back in her chair, studying my face. "You're remarkably calm about this. Most people in your situation would be emotional, irrational, making threats they couldn't follow through on," I finished. "Janet, I've spent 15 years building my reputation in this industry. I'm not about to destroy it with dramatics, when methodical documentation will achieve far better results." She nodded slowly. "What do you want from HR?" "I want them gone by the end of the week. Cleanly, professionally, and with sufficient documentation that if they try to steal our clients, we have grounds for immediate legal action. I also want IT to conduct a full forensic audit of both their computer access and any files they've downloaded or transmitted. Consider it done. I'll coordinate with legal and IT this afternoon. We'll need to involve James Henderson directly given the severity of the violations." That evening, I went home to our Lincoln Park condo and made dinner for 2 out of pure habit. Marcus didn't come home until nearly 10 p.m., smelling like Sarah's cheap vanilla perfume and radiating the particular smugness of a man who thought he was getting away with something. "Working late again?" I asked pleasantly, not looking. "Up from my book. Digital strategy waits for no one," he said, loosening his tie. Sarah and I were prepping for the Morrison Industries pitch tomorrow. Morrison Industries, one of my oldest clients, worth $1.4 million annually. Of course, they were preparing for an account that wasn't even theirs to pitch. "That's dedication," I replied. "I'm sure Mr. Morrison will be impressed by fresh perspectives." Over the next 2 days, I watched them operate with increasing boldness. During Wednesday's client review meeting, Sarah actually suggested restructuring account management to better leverage digital integration across all platforms. She was proposing to move my clients to Marcus's team, and she was doing it in front of the entire senior staff. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Sarah's raised some excellent points about modernizing our approach. Some of our longer-tenured account managers might benefit from fresh strategic perspectives. The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't even pretending anymore. James Henderson, a silver-haired man who had built the agency from nothing into a $50 million operation, stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Interesting proposal, Marcus. Diana, what are your thoughts on restructuring your accounts?" Every eye in the room turned to me. Sarah was practically glowing with anticipation, no doubt expecting me to defend my territory desperately or break down under pressure. Instead, I smiled calmly. "I think change can be very healthy, Mr. Henderson. Sometimes people reveal their true intentions when given enough rope." I looked directly at Sarah. "I'm confident that talent and integrity ultimately rise to the top." The meeting ended with Henderson promising to consider all perspectives before making any structural changes. As we filed out of the conference room, Sarah brushed past me. Some of us aren't afraid of evolution, Diana, she whispered. Adapt or become extinct. I turned to face her fully. You know, Sarah, in my experience, the most dangerous predators are often the most patient. They study their prey carefully before striking. For just a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face, but her arrogance quickly reasserted itself. Good thing I'm not anyone's prey, she laughed. No, I agreed quietly. You're not. Thursday morning brought the first wave of consequences. I arrived at the office to find Janet Morrison waiting by my door with a security officer and IT director Tom Walsh. Diana, we need to discuss the timeline for tomorrow's actions, Janet said quietly. Can we use your office? I unlocked the door and gestured them inside. Tom immediately began speaking in the hushed tones of someone delivering classified information. The forensic audit confirmed everything in your documentation, and then some, he said. Marcus accessed your client files 847 times over the past 6 weeks, including downloading price sheets, renewal contracts, and strategic planning documents. Sarah used her intern credentials to access the executive database and downloaded over 2 gigabytes of proprietary research. More concerning, Janet added, they've been using company email to communicate with 2 potential investors about something called Strategic Solutions Group. They've already filed preliminary incorporation paperwork. The security officer, a former Chicago PD detective named Robert Burke, consulted his tablet. We've also documented 17 instances where they used company resources to research office space rental, business formation services, and competitive intelligence on Henderson and Associates' pricing structure. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. They hadn't just betrayed me personally. They had committed multiple felonies while plotting to destroy the company that had given them careers. What's the timeline? I asked. Janet pulled out a carefully prepared schedule. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., both Marcus and Sarah will be called to separate meetings. Security will simultaneously secure their workstations and revoke all access credentials. Legal will be present to explain the potential criminal implications of their actions and offer them one opportunity to return all proprietary information in exchange for avoiding prosecution. Will they accept? I asked. Robert Burke snorted. People like this never think they're actually caught, even when confronted with evidence. They'll deny, deflect, and try to negotiate. That's when they usually make it worse for themselves. That evening was the most surreal of my life. Marcus came home actually whistling, carrying a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of flowers. Sarah's favorites, not mine. We should celebrate, he announced, popping the cork. Big changes coming at Henderson and Associates. Some people are finally going to get what they deserve. I accepted a glass and raised it toward him. To people getting exactly what they deserve. We clinked glasses, and I watched him drink deeply, completely unaware that he was toasting his own professional destruction. Friday morning, I arrived at the office 30 minutes early and watched from my window as Marcus and Sarah arrived together in his BMW. They were laughing about something, probably imagining their imminent triumph over the naive older woman who had trusted them. At exactly 9 a.m., I watched Janet Morrison approach Marcus's desk, flanked by Robert Burke and Tom Walsh. Marcus, we need you to come with us for a brief administrative meeting, she said pleasantly. Simultaneously, 2 other security officers approached Sarah's workstation. The timing was military precise. I couldn't hear the conversation from my office. But I could see Marcus's body language shift from confident to confused, to alarmed, as he realized this wasn't a routine meeting. Sarah, meanwhile, was gesturing emphatically as the security officers began photographing her workstation. My phone rang. Diana, this is James Henderson. Could you come to my office immediately? We have a situation that requires your input. Henderson's corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, and on clear days like this one, you could see all the way to Michigan. He was standing at the window when I entered, hands clasped behind his back in the pose he adopted when handling serious business. 15 years, he said without turning around. That's how long you've been with this company, Diana. In all that time, have you ever brought me a problem without having a solution ready? No, sir. I don't believe in creating problems for other people to solve. He turned to face me, and I could see the weight of running a business in his eyes. Janet showed me everything. The documentation, the evidence, the systematic betrayal of everything we've built here. He paused. She also told me you could have handled this very differently, less professionally. Destroying my marriage was personal, Mr. Henderson. Attempting to steal our clients and proprietary information was business. I've always kept those two categories separate. How long have you known? 6 weeks. I wanted to be absolutely certain before involving the company in what could have been dismissed as domestic drama. Henderson nodded slowly. That's why you're senior vice president at 38, and that's why Marcus will never advance beyond middle management anywhere else. Assuming he finds employment after this, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Janet Morrison escorting Marcus toward the conference room where legal was waiting. His face had gone pale, and he kept looking around as if searching for an escape route. What happens now? I asked. From a business perspective, you'll be taking over all digital strategy responsibilities for your accounts, with a corresponding salary adjustment and equity stake. We can't afford to lose your clients during a transition period. I blinked. Equity stake? 5% of the company, vesting over 3 years. Diana, you've generated over $20 million in revenue for Henderson and Associates in the past 5 years. It's time your compensation reflected your actual value rather than the artificial limitations of a traditional employee structure. 20 minutes later, I was walking back to my office as a partial owner of the company when I encountered Sarah in the hallway. She was clutching a cardboard box and looked like she had been crying, though she was trying to maintain her composure. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "You couldn't handle being replaced by someone younger and more talented." I stopped walking and faced her directly. "Sarah, in 6 weeks, you managed to destroy your career, Marcus's career, and any possibility of working in Chicago marketing again. You accomplished something that would have taken years of ordinary incompetence. We'll see about that. Marcus and I will start our own company and take every one of your clients. You're nothing without this job." "Actually," I said pleasant, pulling out my phone, "you might want to check your email. About 20 minutes ago, I sent detailed summaries to all my clients explaining that Henderson and Associates had discovered and terminated employees who were attempting to steal proprietary information. I included enough specifics that they'll recognize you immediately if you contact them." The color drained from her face. "You can't do that." "I can, and I did. Corporate security isn't optional, Sarah. It's survival." She started to respond, but Robert Burke appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Mitchell, you need to finish the exit process. The attorneys are waiting." As they walked away, I heard her telling Burke that this was all a misunderstanding, that she could explain everything. Even facing termination and potential criminal charges, she was still trying to manipulate the situation. Back in my office, I found Marcus's belongings in a second cardboard box on my desk, along with a note from Janet. "He asked if you would meet him in the parking garage before he leaves. Entirely your choice." I considered it for exactly 30 seconds, then wrote, "No thank you," on the note, and handed it back to security. At 2 p.m., my assistant buzzed to let me know that Millennium Pharmaceuticals was on line 1. "Diana, this is Patricia Hendricks from Millennium. We received your email about personnel changes. Is everything secure with our account?" Patricia had been my primary contact at Millennium for 4 years. She was a no-nonsense VP who had trusted me with increasingly sensitive projects as our relationship developed. "Absolutely secure, Patricia. The individuals involved had no direct access to your proprietary information, and we've implemented additional security protocols to prevent any future issues." "Good. Actually, we've been discussing expanding our digital strategy budget for Q4. Are you available next week to discuss a project that could potentially double our annual engagement? I looked out my window toward the lake, where sailboats dotted the horizon like scattered thoughts finding their way home. I'll clear my calendar. Over the next 6 weeks, Helena Industries transformed from a comfortable position into the most dominant marketing firm in Chicago's pharmaceutical sector. The equity stake James Henderson had offered me was just the beginning. Patricia Hendricks at Millennium Pharmaceuticals had not only doubled our engagement, but recommended us to 3 other major companies in their network. By mid-June, I was managing accounts worth $8.7 million annually, had hired 2 junior associates, and was being courted by industry publications for interviews about strategic client retention in a volatile market. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus and Sarah's betrayal had inadvertently launched me into the executive stratosphere I might never have reached otherwise. Meanwhile, the legal machinery was grinding through their consequences with methodical precision. Michael Chen, my attorney, called me every Friday with updates that read like a masterclass in professional destruction. "Diana, the forensic accountants finished their analysis," he reported on June 15th. "Marcus and Sarah's attempt to steal proprietary information constitutes commercial espionage under Illinois Statute 720 ILCS 516-7. The state's attorney is considering felony charges that carry up to 5 years in prison." And the civil implications? Henderson and Associates is seeking $2.3 million in damages, the combined value of the research they attempted to steal plus punitive damages. Even if they wanted to fight it, they can't afford representation for a case this complex. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Rebecca Martinez, an executive recruiter I'd worked with years earlier. "Diana, I have a situation that might interest you. Are you familiar with Strategic Solutions Group?" The name hit me like ice water. Marcus and Sarah's venture? Former venture. They approached us in May, claiming to have secured major pharmaceutical clients and needing experienced account managers for rapid expansion. We were about to send them several candidates when their references started falling apart. I leaned back in my chair, intrigued. Falling apart how? Well, when we called Millennium Pharmaceuticals to verify their claims, Patricia Hendricks informed us that not only were they never clients of Strategic Solutions Group, but that Marcus Foster and Sarah Mitchell were terminated from Henderson and Associates for attempting to steal client information. She was thorough in her assessment of their character. The satisfaction was exquisite. Patricia had voluntarily destroyed their credibility with the entire recruiting network. "Rebecca, why are you calling me specifically?" "Because Strategic Solutions Group is imploding, and they had signed a lease for premium office space downtown that they can't afford. More importantly, they convinced 2 investors to put up $400,000 in startup capital based on falsified client projections. Those investors are now seeking legal remedies and asking who they should hire to actually service the contracts they thought they were buying." I found myself smiling. "And you recommended Henderson and Associates?" "I recommended you personally." "The investors want to meet next week about transferring their marketing budget to someone who actually has pharmaceutical industry relationships." After hanging up, I walked to James Henderson's office and found him reviewing quarterly projections with a satisfied expression. "Mr. Henderson, I just received an interesting call about Strategic Solutions Group's investors looking for a new agency partner. It seems their startup was built on fabricated client relationships." He looked up with the expression of a chess player seeing checkmate in 3 moves. "How much are we talking about?" $400,000 in immediate project funding, potentially growing to $1.2 million annually if we handle their portfolio correctly. "Diana, do you realize what this means? Marcus and Sarah essentially raised money for their fictional company and handed us the clients. They did our business development for us." The meeting with Strategic Solutions Group's investors took place the following Tuesday at the Palmer House Hotel. Richard Kellerman and Janet Wu were both serial entrepreneurs who had made their fortunes in biotech startups, and they were furious about being deceived. "Ms. Foster," Kellerman began, "we've done extensive research since discovering the fraud. You personally managed every client relationship that Foster and Mitchell claimed as their own. Every successful campaign, every retention success, every innovation they attributed to themselves was actually your work. Janet Wu consulted her tablet. More concerning, they used your case studies and client testimonials in their investor presentations without attribution. They essentially built their entire business plan around plagiarizing your professional achievements. I had prepared meticulously for this meeting, bringing detailed portfolios of my actual work, client testimonials, and projected strategies for their investment portfolio. Mr. Kellerman, Ms. Wu, what Marcus and Sarah attempted was certainly unethical, but it revealed something important. Your investment thesis was sound. The pharmaceutical marketing sector does need the kind of innovative approach they described. They simply weren't the people to deliver it. Over the next 2 hours, I outlined how Henderson and Associates could provide everything Strategic Solutions Group had promised, backed by actual expertise, genuine client relationships, and 15 years of industry credibility. By the end of the meeting, we had a signed contract for $400,000 in immediate project funding and a pathway to the full $1.2 million annually. Richard Kellerman shook my hand with obvious relief. Diana, in 30 years of investing, I've never seen someone turn fraud into opportunity this elegantly. You've not only recovered our investment, but improved our long-term prospects. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at Alinea, Chicago's most exclusive restaurant. As I savored a perfectly prepared meal while overlooking the city lights, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in 4 months. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Diana, this is Marcus. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. The legal situation is getting out of hand and Sarah thinks we can work something out. Can we meet? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Marcus, we talked for 12 years. I'm done listening. His response came immediately. Please, we're about to lose everything. I made mistakes, but destroying our lives won't fix your marriage. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on. You destroyed your own lives. I just documented it. He didn't respond again. The next morning brought news that Strategic Solutions Group had officially dissolved, with Marcus and Sarah facing personal bankruptcy from their failed startup debts. According to Michael Chen, they had also received notice that the Illinois state's attorney was moving forward with criminal charges. Diana, there's one more development, Michael said during our weekly call. Marcus is requesting a meeting with your divorce attorney. He wants to discuss settlement terms. What kind of settlement? Complete capitulation. He's agreeing to your terms regarding property division, alimony, and he's waiving any claims to your Henderson and Associates equity stake. He just wants to finalize everything before the criminal trial begins. 2 weeks later, I sat in my divorce attorney's office as Marcus signed papers that formally ended our 12-year marriage. He had aged visibly since April. His hair was graying, he'd lost weight, and he carried himself with the defeated posture of someone who had gambled everything and lost. Diana, he said quietly as we prepared to leave. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never meant for things to go this far. Sarah convinced me that we were just evening the playing field. I looked at him directly for the first time in months. Marcus, you spent 6 weeks planning to steal my clients, my work, and my professional reputation. That wasn't evening any playing field. That was attempted destruction of everything I'd built. But the criminal charges, the bankruptcy, Sarah, blaming me for everything going wrong. I've lost my career, my marriage, my future. Haven't I been punished enough? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered Sarah's text messages mocking my age, his plans to steal my commissions, and their joint scheme to destroy my professional relationships. Marcus, consequences aren't punishment, they're education. Maybe your next relationship will benefit from what you've learned. That was the last conversation we ever had. By August, the transformation of my life was complete. Henderson and Associates had promoted me to executive vice president with a 12% equity stake in the company. My client portfolio was worth $11.3 million annually. I had 6 full-time employees, and Industry Weekly had featured me on their cover as Chicago's rising marketing executive. The article included a sidebar about learning from betrayal that had generated hundreds of positive responses from women in similar situations. Several had asked about mentoring opportunities, and I was considering starting a professional development program for women in corporate marketing. Sarah Mitchell pleaded guilty to commercial espionage and received 18 months probation plus community service. Marcus pleaded no contest and received 2 years probation plus restitution payments. Both were permanently barred from working in Chicago's marketing industry. More importantly, both had their professional certifications revoked and were required to disclose their criminal convictions on future job applications. Their attempt to destroy my career had permanently ended their own. On a crisp September morning, I stood in my new corner office. James Henderson had moved me to the executive floor and looked out at Lake Michigan. Sailboats dotted the water, like scattered dreams finding their way home. My assistant buzzed. "Ms. Foster, Patricia Hendricks from Millennium Pharmaceuticals is holding for you." "Diana," Patricia said when I picked up, "I have interesting news. Our board approved the Q1 expansion we discussed. We're increasing our Henderson & Associates budget to $3.2 million annually, and we want you to lead strategy for our entire North American market." I sat down slowly. $3.2 million would make this the largest single client relationship in Henderson & Associates' 40-year history. "Patricia, that's extraordinary. Are you certain about the scope?" "Completely certain, Diana. Your handling of the security issues earlier this year demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and discretion we need for our most sensitive projects." The board was unanimous. After ending the call, I walked to James Henderson's office to share the news. He was reviewing architectural plans when I knocked. "Diana, perfect timing. How do you feel about your name on the building?" I blinked. "I'm sorry?" He turned the plans around to show me. "Henderson and Foster Marketing Associates. It's time to make your partnership official. Diana, you've generated more revenue in 6 months than most agencies see in 5 years. This isn't charity, it's sound business." 20 minutes later, I was a named partner in one of Chicago's most prestigious marketing firms, with a 25% equity stake and my name permanently displayed on Michigan Avenue. That evening, I called my sister Jennifer in California to share the news. "Diana, I have to ask, do you ever feel guilty about how completely you destroyed their lives?" I considered the question seriously. "Jen, I documented their crimes and protected my clients. Everything that happened to them was a direct consequence of their choices, not my actions. But you could have handled it differently, more quietly." I could have. And they would have stolen client relationships worth millions of dollars, destroyed Henderson & Associates' reputation, and probably succeeded in their fraud. Sometimes being kind to bad people means being cruel to good people. That's very philosophical. It's very practical. Marcus and Sarah spent weeks planning to destroy my career and steal my work. They would have succeeded if I had prioritized their comfort over documenting the truth. 6 months later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a wedding invitation. Marcus and Sarah were getting married at a small ceremony in Milwaukee. There was no note, but someone had written, "Fresh starts for everyone," across the bottom. I threw the invitation in the trash and went back to reviewing proposals for Henderson and Foster's new pharmaceutical research division. Some stories don't end with reconciliation or forgiveness. Some stories end with competence defeating manipulation, preparation defeating improvisation, and patience defeating impulse. Marcus and Sarah had gambled that I would be too trusting, too emotional, or too naive to stop their theft. They had bet against 15 years of corporate experience, professional integrity, and meticulous attention to detail. They lost. Henderson and Foster Marketing Associates now employs 43 people and manages $47.6 million in annual client relationships. We specialize in pharmaceutical marketing, corporate crisis management, and strategic communications. Our motto, displayed in the lobby where Marcus once tried to steal my future, reads simply, competence, integrity, excellence. It's amazing how much you can accomplish when you document everything. Trust your instincts, and remember that the best revenge is massive success. Marcus and Sarah taught me that some people see trust as weakness and loyalty as stupidity. I taught them that underestimating quiet competence is the most expensive mistake anyone can make. The education was worth every moment.